Testing.
Evening, everyone. Apologies for the slight delay in starting this evening, but it's only a couple of minutes, so please bear with us. I'm Chris Pearson, welcome, and Chair of the Governance and Audit Committee, Colchester City Council. Welcome to this meeting on the 21st of January, and I will get it right, 2025. I'm sure, like most of us, you're still putting 2024 occasionally. Just to say that in the action of any emergency, and I'm not aware of any practice arrangements this evening, please evacuate the town hall and follow the staircase either at the rear of the building or the main staircase, and then collect in the car park behind the town hall in St Runwald Street, please. This meeting's being held in the Grand Jury Room at the Town Hall in Colchester, broadcast live on the internet and can be watched via the Council's YouTube website, both live this evening and for as long as YouTube lasts into the future. I just ask speakers to remember to use their microphones and speak into them whenever they're called upon to do so. Members of the committee and public are advised that they can use electronic devices, but I would just remind them to set these to silent and remind members that if their phones do make a sound during the course of the meeting, they will be reported to the Mayor so that her charity benefits from that breach. Also, if you're going to use any recording device or camera, please use those discreetly. There are toilets on every floor of the building and an induction loop in this room for anyone who requires it. We will have a short break if the meeting is continuing at around about 7:30. So I'm now going to ask others around the table to introduce themselves before we start the meeting proper. Mr. Block?
Richard Block, Chief Operating Officer.
Sam McLean, Newtown and Christchurch.
Councillor Sarah Naylor, Lexton and Braithwaite Ward.
Councillor William Sunnox, Rural North Ward.
Good evening, Councillor Paul Dundas, Tiptree Ward.
Councillor Alison Jay, Highwoods Ward.
Sorry, Sean, after you.
Councillor Sean Kelly, Wivenhoe Ward.
Councillor David King, Leader of the Council.
Matthew Evans, Democratic Services Officer.
Thank you all. So Councillor Jay is substituting for Councillor Paul Smith this evening. So that's our one substitution. Moving us on to item 3. We do have an urgent item or 2, and I'm just going to ask Mr. Weavers to join us just to outline what those are, please. Thank you, Mr. Weavers.
Thank you very much, Chair, and good evening, committee. The urgent items that I'm bringing to you is in relation to two consultation papers that the government published on the 18th of December last year, just before Christmas. One is in relation to local audit reform, and that's entitled A Strategy for Overhauling the Local Audit System in England. The closing date for that consultation is the 29th of January. And also another consultation was issued in relation to standards, and that's called Strengthening the Standards and Conduct Framework for Local Authorities in England. And the closing date for that consultation is the 26th of February 2025. I would like to suggest that both of these consultations should receive a response from this committee on behalf of the Council due to the nature of both of those consultations. But due to the short response window, I'd like to suggest that perhaps the Chair and Group Spokes agree a response to each of those consultations and it be submitted on behalf of the committee, and obviously the response also be shared with all members of the committee. And Chair, if you're agreeable, I will circulate links to the consultations to all members this evening. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Mr Weavers. And in terms of the audit consultation, individual members are given the opportunities to submit their own. I just add as well that the regional audit group, to which I go on your behalf, met a little over, well, about a fortnight ago now, and there is a regional response going to the audit commission or to central government as well. But it seems to me, given the shortage of time that we have, that Mr Weaver's suggestion to us is the most sensible one, but I'll leave it to you, members. Councillor Sunnox.
Yes. Have we got a draft yet? And has I sent my own response, or the key bits of my own response, which I've already done, to the audit one. I sent it, no one's acknowledged that it came through. I've heard absolutely nothing. So is there a draft yet? And when there is a draft, please could it take into account some of what I said? Because I feel strongly that having blamed the national situation for so long for all our woes, we should be making constructive suggestions about how it can be put right. And I feel that the government's proposals of playing around with the institutions are not going to solve it, and that they've got to simplify the way the accounts are prepared, and they've got to actually make some decisions on whether they're going to flex the Treasury rules to IFRS or abandon IFRS completely. So this is quite an important thing, that if we're going to complain about something, at least we show we've got a solution to it.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Sunnox. Anyone else? No? All right. Well, Mr Weavers has made a suggestion to us. Can I take it the fact that nobody is indicating otherwise, that we're all in agreement with that, that the spokespeople from around the committee table from each party liaise with Mr Weavers and agree the formal response from Colchester City Council? Certainly the most pressing one is around the Audit Commission, because we literally have just over a week to do that. All in agreed? Yep. Thank you. Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Mr Weavers. So that moves us on from item 3 then, urgent matters, on to item 4, declaration of interest. Anyone? No? Okay, thank you. Have your say. I'm not aware of anyone wanting to have their say this evening. No? Thank you, Mr Evans. And that leads us then on to item 6.1. So if I could just invite No, it is Andrew. Yes. Sorry, my apologies. Yeah. Andrew's back. It's because he left the table, so sharpish.
Sorry, I was making way for all the have your say speakers.
Back to you then, Mr Weavers. Thank you.
Sorry, Chair, I'm just trying to locate the report.
That's all right.
in the agenda.
I was deliberately throwing you out of kilter by throwing myself out of kilter.
Thank you. Right, thank you very much, Chair and committee. This report is from the council, so in effect this is a shareholder report to this committee. So you need to consider this in your capacity as the shareholder committee for Colchester Commercial Holdings Limited, and the report, as set out, provides you with an update on progress made on the implementation of the CCHL action plan, which you had previously had sight of at your meeting on the 28th of March 2023. Now, the report points out that there has been substantial and substantive progress on those actions contained in that action plan which you looked at back in March 2023. You have the action plan itself, the updated action plan as at January 2025, as an exempt background paper. It's still exempt because of the commercial confidentiality of the contents of that action plan and the report, because they're derived from reports that were provided in confidence to us. However, what I've done in section 4 of the report is to give you an update on the progress that we have made jointly between the Council and CCHL to work towards the completion and implementation of all of the recommendations that were in the action plan. You see there are 30 recommendations which were highlighted in the action plan. And you will see in paragraph 4.5, there are highlighted there the completed actions which are all set out in those bullet points. Won't go through them there. Paragraph 4.6 talks about ongoing actions, and you can see they're all set out there, and one of them includes the composition and competencies of the CCHL board, which is something which we are jointly working on going forward. Paragraph 4.7 is where we're making a suggestion that in light of the substantial and substantive progress that has been made, the ongoing actions that are highlighted in para 4.6 and set out in the action plan should be progressed within the company and also within the council, and they should form part of regular reporting and appropriate assurances to be given to this committee in its capacity as shareholder. So what the proposal is, Chair, in the recommendations in the report, that the committee notes the progress that has been made in achieving the recommendations in the action plan, and that you agree that the actions marked as ongoing be treated as part of the normal governance processes of the company, and as such will form part of the regular reporting by the company to this committee, and that also that you agree that the action plan is now complete, subject to those ongoing actions and that regular reporting on the implementation thereof. So I hope that is clear, Chairman. Thank you. Happy to take any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Weavers. Councillor Dundas.
Thank you. Just for clarity, the report is in a confidential item. So
That's correct. So
if I want to ask some questions about it.
Just to remind members, if you want to ask anything with regard to the confidential item, please ensure that your questions are not specific. I mean, I
think that the whole thing's in the confidential section.
So I think we need to decide whether or not we want to come back and discuss that in camera.
Chair, if I could, if you want to discuss the action plan itself, the background paper, then that needs to be done in private session. If you want to discuss the report, that's in open session.
Yeah, thank you for that clarification, but I thought that was what I was saying. Yeah, so by all means, you can ask anything to do with this report here that's in front of us. But if you want to ask anything specific to do with the action plan,
as the report
refers
to the action plan, the only questions I've got relate to some of the progress on some things in the action plan, and there's not really many questions to ask on the first bit. It's a kind of yes or no. I think the details into the report which it refers to.
All right, thank you. I think my question generally around the action plan, my comment is in 4.7, where it says that we agree that the action plan is now complete. I'm not sure that I can agree that the action plan itself is completed yet. I think there are still ongoing actions. So I'd certainly like that noted so that we appreciate as a committee that there are things that we will want brought back to us by the company as an ongoing matter. Anything else? Councillor Sunnox.
Yes, I'd just like to record that I don't really see anything commercially confidential in an action plan which is orientated towards sorting out the governance of a subsidiary company. And I guess I'd better not say anything else, but it makes it seem to the public as if we've got sort of huge things to hide, whereas this is, you know, it seems to be fairly straightforward stuff, and perhaps I better not say any more. But we do have some serious points to make when we can make them.
Okay, I think point taken, and I probably am not in disagreement with you, Councillor Sunnox, but we can discuss that when we move into confidential session and consider that with Mr. Weavers for any future reports that come to us. Okay, I'm not seeing any other indications in terms of the report that's before us and that we're dealing with in public. So we're asked to just note the substantial progress that's been made on the CCHL action plan, agree the actions as ongoing. Councillor Sunnox?
Sorry, I did have one thing on the report that we've got. It says that on 29th October, I hope I'm looking at the right report.
No, you're looking at the wrong report.
I'm looking at the wrong report. I'll do it.
Okay, right, fine. So we've got those two items to consider and to agree that the action plan is now, and this is where I'm struggling. I'm not convinced that the action plan is now complete, but the action plan has been completed and is an ongoing document. Are we happy with that? Not seeing any indications to the contrary. Okay. So I'll take silence as agreement.
Just for clarity, we're agreeing that it's ongoing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. So that takes us to 6.2. Mr. Weavers can now exit hastily stage left. Welcome, Simon and Alistair. I'll let you introduce yourselves in a moment. And I think we've got someone online as well, haven't we, for this item? So I'll just ask the two of you to introduce yourselves, then I'll ask our online individuals to introduce themselves and then come back to you to take us forward, Simon. Over to you, please.
Simon Coward, Managing Director of Amphora.
And good evening, Alistair Wilson, Senior Commercial Manager for Amphora.
Thank you both. Graham?
Yes, Graham Oliver. I'm a financial consultant that's been supporting Colchester on the closure of the 23-24 accounts, and my apologies that I can't be there in person.
That's all right. Welcome. Okay. Back to you then, please.
Okay, thank you, Chair. So first of all, apologies that we couldn't provide end-of-year accounts at the previous G&A, but we have now provided them for Cale, Carl, the trading company, and Colchester Commercial Holdings. We've also issued the annual report, and we do have an action to try and bring this forward, so to undertake the external audit to provide the end-of-year accounts and the annual report sooner for this year. So we have an action to do that. In terms of the, I guess really a summary and to take any questions. In terms of our overall position for Colchester Commercial Holdings, so throughout all of this, Colchester Amphora Trading has remained successful and generated a profit. We continue to hibernate the homes business and the energy business, and that leads then up to the final position in terms of Colchester Commercial Holdings, where we have seen an overall position that it's not easy to explain in summary because of the hibernation of Kale and Carl, but trading continues to come through to be successful. There are summaries within the annual report, but I guess at this stage, just as an overview, happy to take questions.
Thank you. And I think it was remiss of me not to just inform the committee that the chair of CCHL, Councillor Martin Warnes, had hoped to be here this evening, but due to work commitments is unable to be. Councillor Dundas, I think I saw your hand first.
Yeah, just to begin, the report we have, item 6.11, says 1.1, on the 29th of October 2024, the accounts were presented to the Governance Audit Committee in draft form. You just said that's not factually correct, and I would say that is not factually correct. We did not receive any accounts at that meeting and have not seen any draft accounts prior to them actually being filed with Companies House and HMRC corporation tax returns. So I would like, I'll tell you what we did receive. I'm not going to read it out because it was a confidential item. What we received was a 6-month half-yearly consolidated financial report over 2 pages. That's not a set of draft accounts. So I would like that, or if the committee agrees, that report is revised because it implies that this committee saw and approved something which it didn't, before we move on to anything else.
Yeah, no, I agree. That's a point of accuracy, so I'm happy with that.
Thanks. Just to continue, I mean, one of the things we're going to talk about is obviously the profit declared, which is in the report, the vast majority of which comes from the writing off of the loan from Colchester City Council to Kale. That obviously has tax implications, which we're aware of, and it resulted in a corporation tax bill of £375,000. Firstly, in terms of how that came about and what advice we took, in the document agreed by this committee on the hibernation of Kale, it says 7.11 that a full tax advice will be taken. This committee, would it be possible for this committee to see that tax advice? Because the committee approved the hibernation of Kale on the assumption that there would be third-party full tax advice taken, and it's in the document which we approved on that night. So I think it's reasonable for us to ask to see that in light of the actual tax bill which has incurred. A second, I just want to confirm the actual order in which things have happened. Now, Kale was holding an asset valued at 1.05 million, okay, with a loan outstanding of 1.5 million to Colchester City Council. So as I understand it, that loan has been written off, but then a cash purchase has been made by the council to Kale for that asset, and it must have been a cash transaction because I think Kale only had, well, there must have been some money moved about because it only had, what did it have? It didn't have 375k in the bank. In other words, it hadn't got any cash to pay the corporation tax bill. So it must have got 375k from somewhere. So can you confirm what cash injection went into Kale to pay the tax bill and where it came from? And was that against the borehole assets, the 1.05 million, which had been moved to being held for sale? And what is now, assuming that they have been purchased by the council, what is the anticipated future carrying cost on the balance sheet of the council of that asset, and how are you justifying that cost?
Okay, so I think there are probably 1 or 2 of the questions that you're asking that I'm also concerned about, that we can't expect Simon to be able to respond to. So I'm not sure at this point whether Graham, are you in a position to be able to respond to the questions that were just raised, the financial questions that were just raised about tax liability and where that asset now lies?
Yes and no, and I will, Councillor, I'll do my best to, and my apologies for what I can't answer because I've sort of come in and slightly on the periphery of and just looking at one specific answer, so aspect. So apologies in advance of anything I can't do.
That's
As
fine.
far as
Whatever you can illuminate us with is welcome.
the straightforward one, as far as the tax advice, my apologies committee that I have no knowledge of that and wasn't involved on what tax advice was taken before the council made the decisions. It did, but I'm again quite happy to take that question away in order to provide an answer to that. As far as the as far as the and I will leave Simon and colleagues to answer the question about when the tax bill is due to be paid by Kale and how it was paid, because obviously that is a pure company aspect. As far as then the asset on the purchase, the actual purchase of the asset didn't happen in 23-24, which is obviously why in the accounts it's been shifted to asset held for sale within the Kale accounts. The purchase is happening this year, 24-25, by the council. And therefore, at that point in time, when the 24-5 accounts are closed, it will be brought in and shown as a asset of the council. At that point, which would be normal, is it would be come in and the carrying value it is held on the council's balance sheet will be as at the purchase price initially. And then as part of the annual process of examining assets, a discussion will be had as to whether that asset then needs revaluing and to go up and down accordingly. But when it is first purchased, it will come onto the balance sheet as at the purchase price that the council has made and paid across to Amphora, to Kale.
Thank you. Okay, so in terms of the tax payment, I think we know from the accounts, but I'll just come back to Mr. Coward just to confirm that that's the case.
Yes, so the tax has been paid, the £375,000 has been paid to achieve the deadline of the 31st of December.
Thank you. Councillor King, at this point, I'm just going to ask you if you're aware of what tax advice, if any, was taken to determine that this be dealt with and accounted for in the way it has been.
No, I'm not aware. I take as seriously as other members do that we come to the most measured decision that we can around tax treatments, remembering, of course, that tax is an appropriate charge. We're not in the business of avoiding it, but if it is appropriate, legal, and the like to minimise it, that of course we should do. My understanding is that this is being looked at in the context of later years treatment as well, so I'm not sure that the issue is itself closed. In terms of the earlier question from Councillor Dundas, Paul, from my perspective, we of course should share anything that's helpful to the committee at any stage, including advice on tax treatment. I haven't seen that. I've seen what I would call a related paper, which I found, I'll be frank, a little impenetrable, and which did not refer to the specific sums that have been raised. So I think this is going to have to be taken away unless there are officers in this room who can give you a better advice than I can give now.
Thank you, Councillor King. I'm just going to come back to Councillor Dundas, and then I'll bring you in, Councillor Kelly. Councillor Dundas.
Thank you. Yeah, I mean, just for clarity, you know, the document we approved in this committee actually doesn't say if, it says preparing KL for dormancy will require tax advice and a full assessment of the company's existing and future tax liabilities. So if that wasn't carried out, then the approval this committee made wasn't followed. I'll say that. Just, I mean, presumably the value, can you actually confirm, and I don't think it's commercially confidential, the cash transaction from the council to Kale. We had a carrying value of 1.05 million, I think. So I see, is that the purchase price which has been made? Has there been a cash payment of that amount from the council to Kale? And what's going to happen next year, because Kale has now sold an asset? What are the tax implications of that for next year is my next question.
All right, Mr. Coward shaking his head, so I'll see if he can answer that one.
So in terms of the cash transaction that was made in 2024-25, so this financial year, it is 1.05 million. Effectively, that cash value is equivalent to the build cost. That was the best way to value it, deemed at this stage, and so that will result in, if you consider our operating surplus that we're looking to generate, plus that cash receipt, then that will result in further tax burden in 2024-25, which we will be looking at how we mitigate. So there is an action plan in place on how we'll look to mitigate as much of that tax burden as we can. There are a number of opportunities that we can tap into that will enable us to do that, but we have an action to do that.
Okay, Councillor Kelly.
This might be not really the right way of phrasing this question. Something that confuses me, and I think would probably confuse other people who have a similar background to me, is what it appears to be a group company structure that we've got here, where you've got the holding company and then the subsidiaries underneath. And my understanding of group company structures is that you can hold losses between different, between a child and a parent company. So by writing the loan off, you created a gain on one side, and I don't understand why there's no loss on the other side, which would then create an equal tax. Doesn't pay tax, right? Okay. No, but can we sort of now explain that so that other people will be able to understand this? I just think this is something that anybody else, a lay person looking, will look at this and go, I don't understand why this doesn't cancel each other out. So can anybody sort of summarise that in a succinct way?
Thank you, Councillor Kelly. Certainly, it does look a bit strange, I admit, and I acknowledge that, because when I saw these accounts, I think Councillor Sunnox and I both looked at them and thought, why are we doing it this way? Why are we incurring a tax liability? Colchester CCHL is wholly owned by Colchester City Council, and what's happened here is that an asset that was owned by CCHL has been sold to the City Council, and that has meant that CCHL has an income which then becomes a taxable income. And that's I think that's the quandary that we have when we look at these accounts. Why has that taken place, and on what advice have we come to the conclusion that we have? Mr. Block, do you want to come in at this point?
Yeah, I feel I do need to come in to expand on Councillor King's point around the technical advice that was actually taken from Asset Link, who are kind of experts in this field. And I think probably what the committee needs to understand is this is not as simple as hibernating a company in a private company finance perspective. Actually, there are a web of links between the company and the council's financing of that company through previous investment in the company. And as such, you can't just do something in the company without understanding the complexities of public sector finance in the council and the impact that actually has. So the advice actually sought was from experts in this particular field to be able to really marry the two up and come up with the best proposal overall for the bottom line for the council in terms of exercising the committee's will to hibernate the companies. And that was the advice that was sought from Link to actually take this particular course of action and follow it through.
Thank you, Mr. Block. Councillor Sunnox.
Yes, we really need to see that advice from Link because it looks stark, staring wrong. If you've got a non-taxable entity like CCC, and you've got a taxable entity like Kale, and you write off the £1.5 million loan, you pay tax. And that is so blindingly clear that I can't believe Link would make that mistake if they'd been asked the right question. Don't think there's any complexity at all about that. So I think we need to take that and rest on that and not get too confused about the asset transfer. And it seems that it's too late to do anything about it. We paid the tax, we filed the accounts, we can't uproot it. I don't think, unless anyone really wants to go radical and try and retract the accounts I found, the first time I found the accounts was at Companies House. And so they're there. And I doubt there's anything to do about that. So we need to ask who made the decision, whether that was in line with our rules, whether our rules are right, whether we need to... This is in Colchester, by the way. It's Colchester CCC who made the write-off, not the company. The company then had to account for what was done to them, and they've done it correctly, and they paid the tax correctly. So we need to find out where the decision was made. We need to find out why people are writing off £1.5 million loans without coming to Cabinet. And we need to understand that. And then the next thing we need to do is to sort out the £1,005,000 transfer of the boreholes. And to do that, you've got to understand what capital allowances we've claimed on them, because they will be clawed back. And if there is any capital allowance claimed, we'll get them clawed back, and that'll be a profit, and it'll be a pain to have to pay tax on it. There should be lots of ways of dealing with that. Simon Coward's right. We should, and this will be within the group. We should be able to, we've got a big write-down of Colchester Amphora Homes Limited. There may be a way of offsetting those two. And I feel sure that, in fact, I suspect Scrutton Bland, this is not difficult tax planning. Scrutton Bland can probably tell you how to do that. I have more confidence in them doing that than I would someone like Link, who seems to be very public sector in its approach. Then the final level we need to go to is to say to ourselves, we've got this corporate structure, and every time we pay a dividend out of it, or every time we make a profit in it, we're having to pay tax on that profit. We're having to pay finance staff, quite well-qualified finance staff, money to do the corporate engineering. Got all sorts of little frictions and so on between the subsidiaries and the council. My view is that we need an independent chairman to handle that interface. And then, so the final question we have to ask is, all that expense and structure necessary for running two quite successful businesses that seem to be sitting in there, and it seems to be that there's the helpline business seems to be good, and the events business seems to be good. Do we need all that structure around it, or could they be taken into the council? And those companies have not got any assets. They're only really managing council assets. So, you know, why are we making this complexity? So 3 levels. We need to get to the bottom of the first transaction, the £1.5 million, and we've got to have a bit of a sort of post-mortem on that. The second is, let's get the 1,005,000 right, because it's not too late to do that. The accounts haven't been done, the tax hasn't been submitted, and then we need to look at the bigger picture.
Thank you. And I would agree with you. I mean, I'm not an accountant. I know that you are. But I would agree with you that we need to look at how this has happened, what has happened, and to do our best to mitigate any tax liabilities in the current financial year, if that's at all possible. I think one of the things that I'm hearing you and Councillor Dundas say that I would also agree with is that if we did have tax advice, as well, certainly Mr. Block's indicating that we did, that members of the committee should see what that tax advice was. So we probably want to put that into our recommendations when we finish this evening. We may also want to make a recommendation to Cabinet going forward. I've got Councillor Naylor and then I'll bring Councillor King in.
Thank you, Chairman. There's a point that I'd like some clarity on. Various questioners and speakers have variously asked if people did, who saw the advice and so on. Just for the sake of clarity, can someone who's in a position to do so, Chair, be clear about who should have seen that advice and who actually did see that advice before this course of action was taken?
Okay, thank you. Councillor King.
Right, thank you. I'm listening carefully to the observations made across the committee, and I'm in a similar position. I would expect us to be able to have a storyline around this that relates to the original discussions, that allows us to explain, and I'm with Sean, Councillor Kelly, in the observation that we should be clear. And it's very difficult for the layperson, for any of this, to be clear. So there's a caution in that as well. So the storyline has to be, I think, revisited, and we agreed on that, and re-expressed in a way in which you could walk through the steps of the process from the original, we should take tax advice, which is a common sense thing, and I expect it to be done routinely when it's required, and to then take that advice, if it's from a specialist advisor with the kind of reputation that should have driven our decision to use them, which is true for Link. I would recommend to the committee that we do bear in mind that there are complexities, and they look arcane to many of us in the way in which public sector finances work. But regardless, that should be part of the storyline. So from that original, that acknowledgement of the steps that are going to be taken, depending upon advice to be secured, we wrap that up in a way that makes for a more digestible, more complete story than we've got at the moment. My understanding from Mr. Block is we've had that advice and it's been taken, and if we're talking about who would see that, I'd expect that to go to the appropriate authorities inside the council, like Mr. Block and others, if necessary, to the portfolio holder. That's standard business, depending on the sensitivity. So my undertaking is, as you'd expect, to welcome any requirement for the administration to secure a clearer storyline on this in a way we can understand. But I want to add something else, which I think is really important, which is the context for this, is that the past government, and it would not matter what its colour is, this I think is true for today, has encouraged local councils to take a commercial attitude, to have companies, to pursue service delivery for profit. And we must ensure that our collective commentary and review acknowledges that context. Our companies, and it's been through this committee, are doing really well after the difficulties of COVID. So when we look at company hibernation and loss and tax loss, we have to bear in mind that at different times in the cycle, some millions have been secured, and you can make a case, and I have some of those numbers, and I think they should be context for the committee, that now we are securing significant direct and indirect advantage from those same commercial companies who were set up, not just because we encouraged, but because this council cross-party saw the advantage. That advantage is still flowing through. So I want to try to ensure that what do we learn from this, we don't lose sight of the fact that in the round this is the right thing to do, both for the bottom line of service support and help, but also for the social and economic benefits that, for example, come from, to name two services, Helpline, helping thousands, and from our events company, which has secured some praise from this place for the quality of its offer internationally, and which brings visitors and business into the town. So that's not to avoid the question, it's best to say we need that context. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, and we have in front of us the whole set of accounts for CCHL, which indicate how well some of the the subsidiaries have performed. I'll come back to Councillor Sunnox.
Yes, I think the context is that CCHL, that the events company and also the trading company made a profit of 250,000 and 375,000 was lost on one corporate manoeuvre. So when we're looking at the benefits of having the companies and the more commercial approach, are we really just chasing our tails? I think it's a bigger question that we have to ask, maybe not here, but somewhere. Are we just chasing our tails with this corporate structure? Are these really independent businesses, or are they intercompany accounts sitting on the edge of CCC? I think it's an important point.
Thank you. If I may, Chair, for a moment, extend this. It's a absolutely fair challenge, and I asked the questions you'd expect I should, just to ask for where we were at the moment. And if I quote just a couple of numbers, and Simon can elaborate on this, it's the relationship costs and the treatment of cost through the companies that gives you some significant advantages. The overall M4 business in terms of how it's run, where pension costs fall and the like, the service level agreements, which generate cash into the City Council for the supports provided, that's 500,000. Non-dividend cash savings generated for CCC are said to be the order of 1 million. Now look, my point here is not that to suggest that we need to have that discussion now, but just to reinforce what I said before. There are advantages in running companies that you all on that side of the table will understand well. More than the profit line, we gain benefits, not least, as I said before, the socio-economic point.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Sunnox, and then I'll bring Councillor Dundas in.
I just want to try and move this forward because we'll go on forever, sort of worrying about and saying it's all very difficult and the public sector finances. This is not public sector finance. This is private sector stuff we're talking about. So you've got this group of companies, and if you look, the most interesting notes in those accounts are the related party notes, and it shows flows of money going all over the place. Basically, it's going down from Colchester down to the companies. And then the flow comes back in the form of dividends, which have to come out of taxable profits, and we have to pay tax on those profits. Could we not, one of the things we ought to look at is when we get to paying dividends again, because we've got to 375,000 to make up, we should take those out in a tax-efficient way. We should take them out as management charges rather than paying the tax. Why aren't we, we need to start looking at those things. And then we need to look in the round, and we need to realise, if you read the annual report, it makes it out that these companies have got fibre networks and all sorts of asset, heat networks and wonderful things on it. They're all sitting on Colchester's balance sheet. So this is sort of a great big circular construct of, with tax leaking out over here, professional fees leaking out over there. It's a serious question, and I guess the one I'd put to our leader is, if not now, when do we look at it? I'm not saying that I'm against the companies, but just that we need to look at it.
No, if I may,
Okay,
if I
very
may,
quickly.
Absolutely, Chair. It's a straightforward question, but we've rightly spent a bit of time on both this issue and the context. We should routinely look at this, and so I have no difficulty at all. My response really was earlier, which is that we should come back to the committee on the specific, but we should give advice on the context and some guidance on this. I take the point. I have no love of circularity unless there's a definite advantage, and whatever we do should be as effective in terms of tax minimisation and profit generation as possible. That's a yes, William.
Thank you. And I think it's fair to say that this committee and also a smaller working party did look in considerable detail at CCHL starting a couple of years ago now, and all of that has come through this committee. And, we've picked most of the things up that needed to be picked up to ensure that CCHL was working in a way in which the City Council could benefit from it. But I think it's right that our ongoing auditing is an evolving process, and we will pick things up that need to be reflected upon and maybe altered in the coming 12 months. Councillor Dundas.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I mean, I'd agree with much that the Leader of the Council said. I think actually the Council has long, this is a general point, struggled with exactly what it wants to do with its commercial companies. Does it want them to make money, or is it more interested in social value, or where on that line does it want to sit? And I don't think the Council has ever really given a clear steer actually to its commercial companies what it wants them to do. Does it want them to make money, or does it want them to do something else around social value, or a mixture of the two? And I think that hasn't helped. And I think we can all feel a little guilty about that. And I feel quite sorry for them actually trying to grapple with that. Just to pick up Councillor Sunnux's points, I mean, I would agree when if you're talking about corporation tax and dividends, you are talking about commercial normal accounting, you're not talking public sector accounting. And 99% of what goes on in these companies is not public sector accounting. It is normal, straightforward commercial accounting. These are limited companies registered at Companies House. You can't get any simpler than that. And I think we accept, if you get involved in the commercial world, not everything you do will work out. You will have successful ventures and you will have unsuccessful ones. And we've had some successful ones, we've still got some successful ones. We've had some failures, let's be honest. And one of them has been, for various reasons I won't go into, the energy company. But one of the trade-offs is that, the old expression, speculate to accumulate. If you do that and something goes wrong and you make a loss, one of the benefits of the commercial world is you can take that loss and offset that against money you make in the future or elsewhere, particularly as far as your tax is concerned. That's part of the deal. What vexes us here is we have a commercial venture which hasn't worked, which has lost initially 1.5 million. 1.5 million has gone out of the council and been written off, so that's 1.5 million of cash has gone out of the council and been lost. In effect, because we've then purchased an asset which I suspect when it comes to it and our auditors look at it will be written down quite considerably, rather than getting some tax advantage that we can offset that 1.5 million loss, we've ended up turning it into a 2 million plus loss. And that is what vexes many people, because that's not how it's meant to work. Not only that, of course, we may have other liabilities accruing which we're going to have to pay next year. A lot of this, of course, comes back to the fact that this committee didn't see any draft accounts. If we'd seen some draft accounts, we could have asked these questions before the accounts and the tax returns were filed. So as shareholders, we have not had oversight on this. Events have happened without us knowing about them. We weren't told, unless there was an urgent item or whatever, that this was going to happen. But this is the issue. You shouldn't be in a situation where you lose on a venture and you end up paying a whopping great tax bill on a venture which has failed at a loss. And that's what's happened. And I think we are right to ask very difficult questions about it.
Thank you. Simon, is there anything that you want to respond to?
Really accept all the points, all the conversations. I guess just a few points to add. So in terms of the heat network, I think it's important just to know, I accept all comments made, that the City Council did receive a grant for 3.3 million at the very start of this. So it's important not to forget that that's what Cale did bring in at the very beginning. In terms of the assets, really accept Councillor Sunnux's point. I think our goal is to sweat CCZ's assets as much as we can, but really accept that point. I also think we now need to move. We have, in a way, the losses in Cale and Carl have been offset, and so that focus on tax needs to now move to not making an operating surplus, but taking a different approach, such as reducing the management fee further. And we have a goal to do that. And I think in that widest sense, we need to show a real focus on not just the cash we're giving back, but the value in all respects. So we've been working on that shareholder value. And as I said at the beginning, apologies for the lateness of that end of year accounts, etc. And we are bringing that forward. Please be assured that will not happen again. We will be doing that at least 3-4 months ahead, and we're reviewing how to put the procedures in place to make sure that happens.
Thank you. And I think on that last point, we need to acknowledge that you only took on your position midway through the year, so we recognise that. I'm not seeing Councillor Sunnucks. No, right. I mean, the recommended decisions are to review and note the group final accounts. I think we've done more than review and note. Also to review and note the CCHL annual report, which we haven't spent any time really doing. I'm also going to suggest, members, that we also, although we've just had an assurance from Simon that we will do, but also that we ensure that draft accounts come to governance and audit in a timely fashion so that we can make comments before they're finalised. And also I've got down here that we refer concerns to Cabinet about the tax advice regarding CCHL, both historic and future, to ensure that the CCHL accounts are as tax efficient as they possibly can be. Councillor Dundas?
I'd like to suggest we add 2 more things to that. Firstly, to note that the committee did not see the draft accounts as noted in the report, because I think it's important that that's made clear. And secondly, that we would request to see a copy of the tax advice, which we were assured would be obtained when we took the decision to hibernate or over scrutinised the hibernation of the company options.
Thank you. Yeah, and I was going to remind everyone that we'd already made that remark. You'd already made that remark, Councillor Dundas, about the introduction, but also that I'd made the request that the tax advice be circulated to members. Councillor Sunnucks, is there something else you want to add?
Yes, we need to know how the scheme of authorisation works for write-downs like this. And, you know, something I'd expect to go up to Cabinet or to have quite a lot of fuss made about it. Not one for having multiple approvals for everything, but this is quite a big sum and it does have consequences. The other thing is that we ought to, at some point, this might be for the, I'd love to know how we've accounted for this write-down in our own accounts. We should have seen 1.5 million costs going out as we put the journals through. We haven't seen anything. I've got a horrible feeling it's sneaked through reserves or something, which, as you know, is the bane of my life. And also, that 1 million coming in, I think that we've got a double whammy here. Councillor Dundas is quite right. You should be writing things down in your taxable entity. So why did we bring it on over at £1 million? Why didn't we write it down in the taxable entity? And then, of course, because it comes in at a high cost to Colchester, we've got MRP, I imagine, on it. So we've, you know, so I think we definitely need to review that that transaction. So authorisation, review that transaction, and are we hiding things away in the reserves in Colchester?
Right, thank you. I think the leader of the council is here this evening and is listening intently and responding and reflecting on the comments that are being made. Councillor Kelly and then Councillor Naylor.
Thank you. I would like just a bit of reassurance from someone who knows how the system works. Is there any scenario whereby council tax monies, as paid by the residents here, could be used to pay, in some bizarre flow of money, a corporation tax bill, whereby we were essentially collecting a tax to pay a tax? Because I wouldn't like that.
Okay. Councillor Naylor.
Thank you, Chairman. I just wanted to return to a point I think it was made by Simon. He mentioned there was a grant that was attracted by Kale. I think it was just over 3 million. Is that right? So is the money for the boreholes 1.05 million? Was that from the £3 million grant? And if so, have we therefore had all of that grant? And if so, what's happened to the rest of the grant?
So I can't answer that as CCHL. I've only got very limited knowledge. I'm aware that the grant was given, but that grant had to go to the council. It couldn't come to CCHL to Kale. So that grant was given to the council. We were given a loan from the council to Kale in order to fund the boreholes, the 5 boreholes. So that's the only information that I've got. Further to that, I'd need to seek information from the City Council.
Okay.
So perhaps, Chairman, I could redirect it to Leader of Council and say, have we had all of that grant? And where is it? Where's the rest?
As far as I'm aware, we have, but I don't know whether Mr. Block can enlighten us on this one.
I think we'll need to come back to the committee and give clarity on the grant. I don't know offhand.
And David, I'm assuming you won't know the precise details of this, and I certainly can't recall. I know we had some discussion about this 2 years ago. Paul, you were in those meetings as well, but I can't recall off the top of my head.
Yeah, I have a feeling, like with a lot of grants, it's you draw down on it in stages. So I think.
Yeah, I think okay.
Rather
than trying to,
we would have
rack
to
our
account
brains,
for it. It's worth remembering, and there is a. If you want extra complexity, there is the fact that those boreholes and the local area heat network, of course, still has a potential utility and value. How that fits with the current value, when that site's developed, I can't answer that. I suspect we don't know in enough detail yet, but this is less than straightforward. I suggest, Chair, that this all has to come back in a way that we walk through, as I say, the storyline and pick up all of these fair points made today.
Thank you.
Just to add, of course, there's a possibility we might have to pay the grant back.
Yeah. So the final recommendation from committee then is that we ask Mr. Block, as our liaison officer, to ensure that we have just a summary report, Richard. It doesn't need to be complex, of what's happened over the last 2 years with Kale, and in particular over this. All right. Are we all happy with the? I think we've got. I don't know, Mr. Evans. Are you clear on what we've got as recommendations now? Yeah. Thank you. All right. Thanks, Matt. And thank you both for your attendance and contribution this evening. Right. So that takes us off item 6.1. Just looking at the time. On to item 7. Review of business continuity. And Hayley, I think this is over to you, please.
Thank you, Chair. Good evening, committee. I'm just going to do a very brief introduction, and actually Lauren, who's our resilience officer, has joined us on the line tonight, and she's going to go into more detail about the report and give you a summary on our business continuity activity and our business continuity policy for 2025. So, as I say, I'm to do a very brief intro. The report in front of you is for the year from the 1st of January 24 to the end of December, and covers the work that we've undertaken with regards to business continuity. And those of you that have been on the committee for a little while will know that we are very closely aligned our business continuity and emergency planning And business continuity is about how we continue to provide our services here at Colchester in the event that we experience an interruption from whatever form. And I'm going to hand over to Lauren now. She'll go into a little bit more detail for you.
Welcome, Lauren.
Thank you. Thanks, Hayley.
Would you like to just introduce yourself to the members of the committee, please?
Yep. So as Hayley said, my name's Lauren. I am the Resilience Officer, Colchester City Council. I don't think I've met many of you before, so nice to meet you. So you've got the report in front of you, I believe. So I'll just give you a brief summary on the work we've undertaken this year. So first of all, we've had a good year actually this year with business continuity. We've made quite a lot of progress following the restructure of the council services. We had to look again at our business impact assessments and our business continuity plans. So I've been working with the heads of service for each department to make sure they've got their business impact assessments up to date and also their plans as well. So that's been good work we've done this year. We had a training and an exercise event which took place in June and July this year. We had all of the heads of service, senior managers, and also some members of the senior leadership board. They were given business continuity training, just like a general overview of why we do it, why it's important, etc. And then the next session we did was scenario incident, which was brilliant. We did that based on a cyber attack at the council, where we basically lost everything, going back to sort of pen and paper, which raised a few eyebrows, and it really did test our plans to make sure that, have we really got everything? Have we really thought of everything? So, that was good. And obviously on the back of that, that generated a little bit more work and a bit more of a review of our plans as well. So hopefully we'll be able to do that every year. So it was, we got really good feedback on that. And it's obviously important that we keep up with our testing and exercising of our plans. There have been several emergency planning and business continuity issues that the council has had to respond to during the year. So we had a potential cyber threat around the elections back in May, which was dealt with well by our ICT teams. We had 2 vehicles that collided with buildings and other possible dangerous structure calls. We had the building collapse at the Natural History Museum, which was overseen by our first call officers and health and safety officers. And obviously that escalated further into a business continuity issue for that particular service. We always have several teleconferences due to weather impacts that obviously affect some of our services, especially our recycling and waste. Also our helpline colleagues who are out and about, our parking, and we also had our audit, which we received recommendations for. Both of those have been signed off, so that was good. I think that's pretty much it for our work we've undertaken so far. Any questions on that? If not, I'll move on to our strategy, which just requires a sign-off.
I've got 1 or 2 indications, so thank you, Lauren. Well, I'll come bring in councillors and we'll come back to you for responses, please. Councillor Kelly.
Oh, thank you, Chair. Could you elaborate a little bit on the mock cyber attack that happened? What was the nature of the simulated attack, and what was the timescale that you guys managed to become operational again within? Thank you.
Councillor Sunnocks.
Yes, it's a question along the same lines, thinking along the same lines. I think of a cyber attack and a lot of the rubbish that would be swept away, and I think, great. Supposing the revenue and benefits database got cleaned, what on earth would you do? How would you recover that? Just to use one specific thing that sounds to me catastrophic.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Sunnock. So I think I'll let you deal with those two first of all then, Lauren.
Yeah, thank you. So we based it on a cyber attack, sort of the whole council ICT structure was hacked. So people were getting messages saying you've been hacked, ha ha ha, come up on their screen. So we lost access to Microsoft completely. So like Teams, emails, etc. So it was a bit more around communication, you know, if that's down, how we communicate with each other. So, you know, have we got them and phone trees in place in terms of using, you know, WhatsApp, is that available? So, I mean, in terms of timeframes that we got it back up and running again, I think we had the scenario of being hacked lasting 24 hours. And then it was about how our ICT slowly recovered certain bits. I think we looked at it as if ICT could concentrate on getting the Microsoft aspect back up, that sort of dealt with a lot of the issues across all services. So if people could get sort of Teams and Microsoft back up, it would obviously help quite a lot. But we didn't get like definite answers on the day. It was more, you know, this has happened. You need to go away and have a look at your plans and make sure that you've got, like you say, if Rebs and Bens was completely wiped out, have you got the contingencies in place to be able to deal with that? And that's what we're reviewing post exercise. So I probably haven't got the direct answer to that question, but it was sort of making everyone review their plans. You know, if we did get this scenario, what would you do?
And in terms of what would happen if revenue and benefits went down, do you have a response to that or not?
Well, sorry, that's what I was just trying to say is it would be detailed within their service specific plan. So I don't, Sam Preston is obviously working on her plan at the moment, so that hasn't been reviewed post exercises yet.
Okay, thank you. Hayley?
Yeah, I just wanted to comment on that bit in terms of how quickly we recover services and how quickly it can be done. It will depend on the issue that we're facing at the time, but as part of the exercise, the authority has established the critical services. So because we can't recover everybody together, we have a list of critical services and they're done in order. So something like revenues and benefits is one of our critical services because we're aware of the fact that we need to keep those payments going. In an extreme scenario, our fallback position is to replicate a payment run. So if we can't do anything else, we know it won't be right, we know it won't be correct, but that is the worst case scenario to ensure that as much of the benefit payments as possible are made. Now, obviously, we are working on individual plans and it's not appropriate to share the full details in a public forum about how we would manage those. But we do obviously keep off-site backups. So everything that we do is replicated. We can reinstall those, and that's part of the ICT process. So it's quite detailed for each service, but to give you that reassurance, we have a structure for which ones we bring back first, what's critical, and a fallback worst case scenario.
Thank you. Councillor Kelly.
Just on your off-site backup that you mentioned, have you ever run an actual full recovery from the off-site backups in a disaster recovery scenario to ensure that they're actually 100% viable? And when you did them, if you did them, how long did it take to retrieve them and then reinstate them?
I don't have those details to hand. My ICT colleagues do have disaster recovery plans and they do practice those on a very regular basis. What we are planning on doing, what we'd hoped to do before tonight, was to give you a specialised business continuity training session. So as part of your training and development plans going forwards, That's hopefully being scheduled for next month in March. I've got a date available from Richard to do your training in March, and we will look at the IT side of that and give you a bit more detail. So I can come back to you with some confirmed details about the last practice, etc.
Sounds interesting. I'm sure we'll all be there. Okay. Anyone else? Councillor Jane.
I was just going to say, in terms of obviously my portfolio position and ICT, I was up to date with the cyber attack that we did have. What they're really doing is not looking at specific services within the digital side, but that attack coming to us in the first place. And what actually happened in May was that our teams were very well aware very quickly, and out of a number of councils, we were one of the only ones that responded quickly, didn't have any enormous issues. We did need some backup support, but the plans are there and in place, and it's an ongoing and continuing thing. We've got a very good team here. I mean, some of the attacks they're continual. So they are, and at the time we ended up having 24-hour cover for a number of days so that the team could work on it and drill down and see where the issues were. One of the big problems that did come to light were insecure passwords, staff and councillors, which is one of the reasons that in briefings we've asked that people use secure systems, because we're very aware of the issues that might happen.
Yep, thank you for that. No, and I can completely empathise with issues around IT security, having been in the line of work that I was previously in criminal justice. I know how essential IT has become, but when it is under threat, it does create all sorts of issues and problems. But yeah, passwords are critical, and I know I used to rail that I had to change my password every month, but I knew why. It was a pain. I came up with a solution that worked for me. I would just go through my favourite football team's players by number, so that each time I would move on to the next player, because you reach a point, if you're having to change your password that frequently, that you can't remember what you last did, or what the ones you used 8 months ago were, and you can never use the same one twice. So I think password changes, as difficult and as onerous as they are one of the best ways to secure our IT.
Can I just suggest, Chair, you might want to change your passwords quickly tonight. This is a public meeting.
No, that was my strategy. That was. I use a different strategy now. What I was going to say is, in terms of the paper that's before us, Lauren, I noticed that we've got gold, silver and bronze leaders. I never made it to the heady heights of gold, but I was silver from time to time. I'm just wondering, it does say senior management gold. Is that every member of the senior management team that's gold, or is it just some of the members?
It should be this, gold is the senior leadership board, so it might be a typo that you've spotted maybe, but yeah, that's who should be gold, and then silver should be the heads of service.
Yeah, thank you. That's what it seems to suggest. I just wondered if that was everyone who was gold. Right. Any other questions or comments? No? Thank you. So we were asked to consider and comment on the business continuity work undertaken. I think we've done that and asked a number of searching questions, and also to endorse the business continuity strategy for 2025. All agreed? Yep. Thank you. That moves us on to, I think, Lauren, thank you very much for your contribution this evening.
That's okay, no problem. Thank you.
That moves us on to item 7.2, Health and Safety Report. Back to you, Hayley.
Absolutely, Chair. And I am joined tonight. I'm just trying to see if I've got I'm just trying to find the right name. So Lee has joined me tonight as well, and Lee is our Health and Safety Manager here at Colchester.
Welcome,
so
Lee.
He's come along to answer any of the difficult questions you might have. So again, it's just a very brief introduction from me in terms of the report that's in front of you. It actually spans more than a year. So because of the timings of the committee meetings, the last report to this committee was actually, I think, October 23, or it might be November 23. So rather than do a bit of a year, what I've done is taken it from the 1st of October 23 right up until the end of 24. So you've got the most up-to-date information with regards to our health and safety environment here at Colchester in that time period. So it's slightly longer than a year that we're looking at. And obviously, I'm not going to go into great detail about all of the work that's been undertaken and some of the trends that we found. And I'm going to hand that over to Lee.
Hi, I'm Lee Holden, the Health and Safety Manager. This report covers from the 1st of October 23 to the 31st December 24. Hope you've all had time to read the report, but I will spend a few minutes going through the main points. I'll also answer some the questions that are raised in 6.2 and 6.5 in my summary. We continue to roll out the management system. All the high risk and larger sites have been completed, and I'm just completing like a mopping up session for the first phase. Like a large project we've been doing recently is the corporate compliance around the big six, which is the fire, water treatment, gas, electricity, which is the ICRs, asbestos and Lola lifting. This has been a key focus. 2 work stream. Work stream 1 was obtaining certificates and reports for all of the above, and work stream 2 is the remedials that come out of them reports. For fire, the main trends are issues with fire doors, compartmentation, general housekeeping and training. These have all been identified and works have started. We've instructed a health and safety audit by Rachel Marriott, who's a consultant. I would describe it as a gap analysis. I welcome this process because it just shows anything else that we need to do, and it's all a part of continuous improvement. We continue putting on courses such as first aid courses, DFib courses, fire marshal courses. Also recently run an IOSH course for duty manager level and above. It's mainly around risk assessments, and we had about, I think, 11 people on that. That's 100% pass rate. They had exams and coursework to do, and this is vital for me because obviously I need assistance from all services and the right people in place and with the right qualifications. I'm just going to address the question that was asked on 6.2, how many slips, trips resulted in legal claims. 1, and that was in leisure. There's a fractured wrist from a customer coming into Leisure World at Cowdrey Avenue. It was wet outside, and she slipped and fractured her wrist. We are defending from an insurance point of view because everything that could be done was done. For example, signage was out, we had matting out, and there was a cleaning regime in place at the time. So yes, there was a claim, and as I said, we are defending that. I referred to a question that was asked on 6.5, referring to 2 incidents in neighbourhoods of staff getting out of vehicles and had to go to hospital and classed as a RIDDOR. Simple solution to this, because it was happened twice in close proximity. We just put signage outside the vehicles, actually stuck on signage on the doors. We've had no other instances since. The signage was a simple solution that says warning and 3 points of contact. I thought I'd identified a trend there, but we rectified it very quickly. We've had 13 RIDDORs in that time period, but no communication or action from the HSE, which is good. The health and safety culture is improving, along with the providence, like evidence, which is paramount. For example, like certification. That's it for me.
Thank you very much, Lee.
Thank you.
And for answering the questions that were asked at the briefing as well this evening. One of the questions that I have, though, is how often are members of frontline staff required to undergo any health and safety training or online training, and how do we ensure that they do?
Oh, sorry. Sorry, it starts from the induction process. Each service is different. For example, if I take leisure, recommend 2 hours a month. That is done. A member of staff cannot work without that training. And there's continuous training around COSH and around incident reporting. As I say, each service is different, but that's a good example.
Thank you. Did I see a hand up along my left? No? Okay. I'll ask another question then. If someone doesn't undertake their health and safety training or refresher, what happens then? Any service, leisure, any service.
So all staff will complete the initial induction. I will be putting out some more e-learning courses as well. But each service is responsible for their own updating of health and safety as well.
Okay. And last one from me. What proportion of our staff are first aid trained? Do you know?
Okay, so I'll answer it in another way. I'll give you examples. So, for example, leisure and museums, the duty manager, as a minimum, will be qualified in that building. For another example would be Rowan House. There is a rota in place for first aid, so and fire marshal. Just as another example. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Anything else? No? Right, thanks very much, Lee, for your contribution. So we're asked to review the health and safety work that's been undertaken over the past year, and also to improve the health and safety policy for 2025. All agreed? Yep. Thank you very much. Right, looking at the time then, it's just gone 7:30, so we'll have a 10-minute break back here at 19:42. I'll give you 11 minutes. All right, thank you. we just finished on the health and safety item, and now we move on to 7.3, update on the governance and audit committee review. And I think Mr. Weavers is leading on this, isn't he? No, he's delegated responsibility to his far more effective. Thank you, Hayley. Over to you.
Thank you, Chair. Members of the committee may recall back in July last year, we presented to you an initial report looking at the CIPFA revised guidance on the operation of local authority audit committees and some of the requirements related to that new revised guidance. There was quite a detailed action plan that we presented as part of that report, and quite a few areas of work to be carried out to ensure that the Governance and Audit Committee here at Colchester was effective and operating within those guidelines. And as part of that, we did say that we'd bring some update reports to you. You received one in September, and there was a further one programmed for this meeting. So this report is going to bring you up to date with where we are on that review and the action plan. And as you can see in section 6, we've set out the work that's been undertaken since the last report to you in September 24. So the annual report, which is one of the key documents, was submitted to full council on the 5th of December 2024, and I think was well received. There was a review of the performance of the committee, compliance with the CIPFA position statement, and the results of the annual evaluation and development work and our planned improvements. And going forwards, that annual report will be coming to yourselves earlier on in the year and subsequently going to full council earlier on in the year. So that one brought us up to date. We will then fall into a normal reporting routine as from June this year. And I think I might have made a slight error in 6.3 in terms of when you've met with the auditors. I think you probably met with the external auditors tonight, and you're due to meet with the internal auditors before next month's meeting. So my apologies for my error in my dates on that one. And then you may recall, prior to Christmas, members of the committee completed the skills gap analysis. Really am having trouble speaking tonight. So that was the template that was agreed by yourselves back in the September meeting, and I've attached a copy to the report so you can refresh your memory with the questions that we asked you. And I will just cover that off by saying we've given you some outline details relating to that skills gap analysis, but we will be having an in-private session with yourselves to go into more detail, because obviously it is personal information about how people feel that they need to, whether they need to undertake training, whether there's any areas of concern. But we have pulled out some of the key statistics from that analysis, and I think it was generally strong scores overall. The average was 3.6 out of 5 for the questions, which is good. Strongest area was strategic thinking and understanding of materiality, which was an average of 4.4. And actually the weakest area was the principles of the CIPFA Solace Good Governance Framework and the requirements of the annual governance statement. So we will be providing you with a separate session to talk you through that, to give you a bit more of an understanding prior to the annual governance statement coming to yourselves in June to support the statement of accounts. So in terms of the actions that have been completed on the action plan, what I've done is everything that was agreed as completed at the September meeting has been moved to the bottom of the action plan, and anything we've completed since September, there's a tick in the column. So once you've agreed the results of the action plan tonight, those items will be moved down to the bottom, and you'll be left with the outstanding items that are due for completion by the end of this financial year. Some of them will be going into the 25-26 year, but obviously you will receive further updates on that, taking that forwards. So hopefully that's given you a bit of a broad outline of what we've done so far, and I'm open to any questions.
Thank you. I thought for a moment, a little while there, I was going to have to withdraw my introduction, but you managed it very well and you got back on track, so well done. I was just going to say that at the regional Governance and Audit Committee Chairs meeting the other week, we were talking about independent members of G&A or audit committees. There's only one audit committee in the region that admits to having an independent chair, but many of the audit committees do have independent membership. And I directly asked the question, how easy was it to do that? Because I know we were a bit concerned when we discussed this about having independent membership and whether or not you'd get somebody of the appropriate calibre. The response was that many of the independent members come from two sets of individuals, either individuals who are retired or retiring and want to give something back to the public sector, or individuals who are in the early stages of a career where they think it would be advantageous to have membership. They have the requisite skills but think it would be advantageous to put that on their CV going forward. So spending a couple of years with a public sector audit committee seems to be beneficial to them. So it may not be quite as difficult as we were thinking it would be. So we might want to consider independent membership in the next council year. That said, I think there's lots of good work that we've done, but we said at the beginning that this was going to be an evolving process, that we wouldn't complete it in a single council cycle, so we will have to continue. I look forward to the offline meetings as well to take us forward. Any other comments? Councillor Sunnox.
Yes, thanks, Hayley. The skills gap analysis. I wrote some rude remarks, I often do when in a survey, saying you've asked the wrong questions. It's not the first time I've done it on surveys, but in this case, I think it was particularly important that they were the wrong questions. It was focusing on process rather than the practical things we have to do. And if we look at the problems we've faced and the goals that have slipped past us, it's not on the process side, it's on the practical focus and linking the business and the accounts and the controls all together that we've failed. And, we've got a 375,000 ball that's just hit the back of the net there. Our processes didn't pick that up. We've got the turnstone problems. We've got the lack of assurance on the accounts. We really can't pat ourselves too much on the back at the moment and sit there smugly saying we're where we should be, because I don't feel we are. And I feel the skills we need are not, if we put the training, we focus the training around those questions, we would be, I don't know what the answer is, but I don't think that would bring us in the right direction. We need far more focused, down to earth, granular, understanding of where we should be looking for the real, for real problems. And I want to agree with our chairman on the idea of perhaps strengthening up the committee with some external input, and probably not at the chair level, because I do see that Chris's role requires a lot of knowledge of the public sector, which you're going to find really, really hard. But having someone either at the beginning or the end of their careers on board, I think that there could be a lot of benefit, and I think we should develop that idea.
Anyone else? No. Okay. I thought we'd have a bit of a discussion on this one, but obviously we're all happy and we're moving forward. So we've been asked to consider and note the work undertaken, approve the updated action plan, and consider results of the skills gap analysis. I think we've done most of that, but very briefly. So we're probably going to have to come back in a bit of detail to this one, I say, in the new council year. Right. Thank you all. Thank you, Hayley, and your sidekick, Andrew. Right. That moves us on to the work programme. Mr. Evans.
Thanks, Chair. There's a couple of report movements just to be noted in the work programme that will move from this meeting to the next meeting in February. But other than that, there's nothing further for me to add if the committee's happy to note the contents of the report. Thank you.
Thank you, Matt. And I did indicate to Mr Evans before we started this evening that we've agreed with KPMG that we will have an in-camera meeting again prior to the March 26th meeting. Councillor Dundas.
Yeah, just I think in light of that and in light of the meeting earlier today, we did when we were looking at the outstanding accounts, we had a standing item on the agenda just for an update. I think in light of the fact that we are now approaching the deadline for the 23-24 accounts, I think we should put that back on. I think it should be a verbal update. We don't want officers writing great long reports when they've got lots of other things to do. But I think we should put that back on as a standing item for meetings going forward.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Sonic.
Yes, it's the same point. You know, it's a question of whether we are going to make the 28th February deadline. And if we're not, which I suspect is the case, then we ought to be going into crisis mode on it. And we should keep this one coming up every meeting. Portfolio holder ought to be there taking responsibility for it. Someone needs to be focused on it. We need to chew at this problem until it's solved, because it's not just a matter of cost. It's the matter, you know, when we come to our budget, how are we going to know that our starting point's the right place? We just don't know. I actually think there could be some things wrong with the reserves. And, you know, so we haven't got any assurance back since the 31st of March 2020. Okay, so it's coming on for 5 years of no assurance of what's going on. And I think we should be in crisis mode about it.
Okay, thank you both. Councillor Kelly.
I'd just like to revisit my request from whenever it was before about us reviewing the recruitment procedures and the mixture and the balance that we have here between full-time staff and the shortfall that's made up with contractors, and looking at just allowing us to have a look at that, because it comes up a lot, and all we see of it is the sort of the surface of it, which is very high level in terms of costs, and in some cases the ramifications of not necessarily having enough people in certain times of the year and for certain things. And I think it would be good for us to actually have a look at it and start to really sort of get into the detail of that if we have time to do this. And I know there was a question last time, well, is this scrutiny or is this governance audit? But I think that this is an audit type of thing to be doing, to actually review how it happens. So if we could get it on the list, I think that'd be really good.
Okay, thanks for that. I would just remind you to hold that thought for a little bit later. Anyone else? No? Work programme, so we're approving in accordance with everything we've just discussed, plus the additional non-public meeting prior to March 26th. Okay?
Adding to the work programme a recurring item.
The recurring item, yeah, which we'd agreed at the start of the year should be a recurring item, but I think when we go into the confidential session, we can touch on that some more. So that leads us on to item 9 then, which is exclusion of the public. And for me, just to read out the usual. In accordance with section 100A, subsection 4 of the Local Government Act 1972, I move to exclude the public, including the press, from the meeting so that any items containing exempt information by virtue of paragraph 3 of part 1 of schedule 12A of the Local Government Act 1972 can be considered. There's an agreement? Agreed. All right, thank you very much.